Hey everyone, Aria Labs here with a blog to watch. Today I'm going to review the Casio G-Shock DW5000R-1A. This is a revival product. This is the first time that Casio has tried to make an almost identical version of the very first G-Shock from 1983. I wrote the book, 40 Years of Casio G-Shock, so I had a lot of experience studying the history of the original model, which was known as the DW5000C. There's been a lot of anniversaries at Casio lately. There was a 40th anniversary of the G-Shock. Then there was the 50th anniversary of their first watch. And so what you're seeing is a company that, in addition to making state-of-the-art technology watches, is also heavily leaning into the tradition, because there's a huge sense of nostalgia out there. And that's part of the reason that Casio likes to revisit some of these old designs. Now, the DW5000R is not an exact replica of the original. It's a little bit different size. It's just slightly larger at 42.3 millimeters wide. But if you put the two watches next to each other, you can certainly see how this is quite different than some of the modern generation watches that have this case profile. Most collectors would have to look at the watches side by side to see the differences. The most obvious difference is the Caseback, which uses a screw-down Caseback, more similar to the original. A lot of the watches today will have screw-in Casebacks that have screws in them and a gasket. This is a little bit more traditional way, and this makes the watch a little bit thicker. There's a lot of details on the dial here, little colors, certain indicators, certain shapes that have adjusted over time. So again, you have to look with a very close eye to sort of see what the differences are. The module inside is entirely modern. So it's not replicating the old one. It's the more modern system they use, which means it has a really good backlight. That's probably the best improvement from the original. A lot of the same features, but this is, by design, a stripped-down G-Shock module, which means no solar, no Bluetooth. Casio makes plenty of other watches for that. Instead, they wanted to focus on one battery with a relatively long battery life, and the lithium battery inside powers it for 5 years. So that's pretty good in terms of having to switch out a battery. Lots of people would have liked for it to be solar, but then it wouldn't really be a revival model because there's plenty of other watches that do that, and this is about the history. Another difference is the resin used. Casio now uses what they call the bio resin, which I guess is more sustainable. Casio's used a lot of materials over time, and some of them degrade, some of them last very long. Again, when these watches were originally made in the 1980s, for example, it wasn't known that people were going to be wearing them for decades. This was, part of the generation of watches as gadgets, and people would go through some of these. So one of the reasons that Casio is compelled to make revival versions of it is that the originals were worn and loved and don't look as great, but there's a lot of people today that want to enjoy that look and feeling from some of those originals. So it makes sense that Casio will come out with that. And again, there's a lot of collectors out there. This watch, when it originally came out, was a watch for people with very harsh jobs that had to experience a lot of grit, a lot of vibrations. In fact, Casio kept thinking about the roadside worker. And they imagined these guys in these dusty, not so great conditions with jackhammers working away and all types of things like that. This was a watch meant for that. So it wasn't really less military environment or anything like that, because G-Shocks are so popular with soldiers today. It was just a rough environment where the watch needed to experience, of course, a lot of shock, but a lot of other things. And so the spirit of that is really alive here. And so what I like about this is it very much feels like a tool watch, because it was a tool watch. Even though it's a design icon today, it was always intended as a watch to wear that could survive special circumstances. And people today take the G-Shock durability for granted. But remember, in 1983, this was the only watch on the market that could survive the types of shocks and drops and vibrations. And again, after more than 40 years now, we take that type of functionality for granted, but this was a big deal back then. So now with the DW5000R, you can relive that a little bit, add this Casio to your collection. We'll have a full article on this on a blog to watch. We don't have the precise price right now, actually, but it's going to be between about $200 and $250. So please see the full review of the Casio G-Shock DW5000R-1A on a blog to watch. Thanks.